Here is Young, finds his spot. Young on the floater, puts it in. Trae Young with a miraculous shot.
TNT with the call. Spiro Ditas there. My goodness, was that an unbelievable play. Unbelievable game last night at Madison Square Garden. Of course, the play you just heard, Trae Young, 0.9 seconds to go in the ball game, hits the floater, and the Hawks stun the crowd at Madison Square Garden and beat the Knicks 107-105. So Atlanta now leads the series, of course, 1-0, and move over Reggie Miller because we have a new villain at Madison Square Garden. The Knicks fans were chanting "Bleep you" at Trae Young early on in the first quarter, and Trae Young, to his credit, never backed down. He played great. And the ultimate difference in this game, if you really break it down from the Knicks-Hawks perspective, the Hawks' best player was great. The Knicks' best player was awful. Julius Randle did not play well at all in this game, needless to say. And when Julius Randle does not play well, it's going to be tough for the Knicks to win. You know, when Julius Randle is going to shoot 6 of 23 from the field and only go 1 of 2 from the free throw line, you're not going to win if you're the Knicks. The only reason why the Knicks even have a chance in this game is because, one, the crowd was just fantastic. It kept the Knicks in the game the entire way. I mean, I've heard loud crowds in New York before for the playoffs. You know, the Yankees have been knocking on the door the last couple of years. You know, we've seen the Islander crowd at the Nassau Coliseum be crazy. The Knicks crowd was as loud as any building I think we've heard in a long time. It felt like there were 50,000 fans there. The R.J. Barrett dunk in the third quarter felt like a legitimate earthquake that was happening. I was getting texts from friends that aren't Knicks fans just talking about how insane it was, you know, to hear the Garden rocking the way it was. In fact, listen to the crowd here as R.J. Barrett basically created an earthquake at one point in this game.
Goes quickly ahead to Barrett. One man to beat. Goes up and throws it down. R.J. Barrett with authority, and the game is tied.
It was just unbelievable what it sounded like. And for all that to happen, and for the Knicks to still lose, man, is that a dejected feeling. But I think if you're going to look at it as the glass half full, you expect Randle to play better in game 2. I don't think the Knicks were ever going to sweep this series. But you tip your cap to Trae Young. I mean, he's a phenomenal player. And ultimately, if you're the Knicks, Julius Randle's got to play better. I did a brief post-game video last night on my YouTube page because I just had to get a lot of this off my chest. You can break down the game a variety of different ways. You know, the Elfrid Payton minutes, enough. You know, if you're going to use Frank Ntilikina, don't put him out there, you know, when he's been sitting on the bench basically for 2 hours to go guard Trae Young in the most important possession of the game. I didn't like that at all. But ultimately, the Knicks lost because Randle wasn't good. And if Randle plays better, the Knicks win last night. It's as simple as that. I mean, despite the Young performance, despite Randle being awful, the Knicks only lost by 2. So I think the Knicks will come out, and I think they'll win game 2, but this is not going to be an easy series for either team. And if you just look at it, not from like a fan perspective, but just from like just watching good basketball, that was a great NBA playoff game last night. Probably the game of the weekend, if you think about it. Back and forth, 2 evenly matched teams, crowd going nuts. I mean, playoff basketball was back at the Garden, and it was just incredible to take in. But from a, Trae Young standpoint, guy's unbelievable. Now, afterwards, he's acting as if, the series is over with some of his comments. I would say watch out, but, he won last night, so he gets to talk his smack. But I expect the Knicks to come out and be a completely different team offensively in game 2. The Knicks were even in this game because the bench was so good, led by Alec Burks, and because I just thought the crowd kept them in it. And the Knicks really missed Nerlens Noel down the stretch. Taj Gibson, he's a nice role player. Nerlens Noel is an elite defender, though. And not having him in the paint, I thought, was a big factor as to why Trae Young was able to basically get whatever he wanted down the stretch. That and the just weak foul call against R.J. Barrett in this game. I mean, at the end there, that was brutal. But ultimately, if the Knicks are going to go out there and win this series, you knew they were not going to do it in a sweep, and they got to win game 2. But this was a fun game, and I mentioned Young being the new villain at the Garden. This was Trae Young afterwards responding to the FU chants that he heard from the Knicks crowd.
You've been in the biggest stages. I mean, when you're in the zone and everybody's chanting FU, I don't know if any of y'all had that, but I've had it a couple times. I had it in college, and I had it again tonight. So, I mean, it got real quiet at the end. And for me, I wanted to hear those FU chants again.
Well, he'll hear them a lot on Wednesday now.